How are you? I'm honored to be here with you. I want to confess that I actually tried to cancel and not come today because I just broke my foot. And I called and I said, is there a way that I can reschedule? And they said no. So I came and I am here, broken foot and all, and I am on drugs. And so if something weird happens, or if I'm a bit more unfiltered than you expected, you have to blame it on the prescription. But I am glad to be here. We just learned, Richard, who travels with me, we just learned that our flight was canceled for tomorrow morning because of a snowstorm. So I might just enroll at NC State, enroll in a PhD program, or we might just be stuck here in North Carolina. So, but I'm glad to be here. Did you know that I spoke at Duke just recently? And I did see, those were the fakest claps I've ever heard. Well, I will say, I did say when I spoke at Duke that I'm actually from Kentucky, and I'm from Lexington, and we hate Duke. And it was, I haven't lived in Kentucky for almost 20 years, and so my hate for Duke has left me. But I literally did not even tell my mother, who is an enormous UK basketball fan. To this very day, my mother has no idea that I spoke at Duke. And because the animosity is that real. And but I'm glad to be back in North Carolina. You know, North Carolina is a complicated place. I know you're not like, oh really? Like, I know you live here. You are fully and completely aware that it is a place that is, like, almost all of you are here by choice. So if there are parts about being in North Carolina that are wonderful and amazing, but there are also parts of North Carolina that are deeply disturbing and problematic. And in so many ways, I think North Carolina is a reflection of America. Like, it's all of the good, bad, and ugly in this country is wrapped right into North Carolina. And all of the struggles and pains and problems that we feel on the national level, you're working through those problems in North Carolina every day. Sometimes better than the country, and sometimes not. But I'm profoundly grateful to be here with you, because there's so many activists and organizers and others who are not just here, but just do the work in North Carolina. And there are leaders that are emerging out of North Carolina that I think are some of the best leaders in the country. And I want to encourage you to show the organizers and activists that are doing great work here in North Carolina, show them love now, show them support now. And we sometimes wait way too long to show people who do the work that we appreciate them. But I'm glad to be here. I'm gonna do something that might disappoint you. I know you're not in class, but today I'm actually going to teach something. And I do hope you leave here inspired. I hope you leave here ready to change the world. But I do want to be honest with you, more than anything else, I hope to teach a lesson today that gives you a tool to actually leave here with. I would even say a new lens through which to see the world. And the lesson that I'm going to teach today was one that took me years to understand myself. And as I've started to use it, I've seen the benefits right away. And I share it because we are in a deeply problematic time. And we need all the tools and all the advantages that we can get. And my belief is you would not be here in the middle of your evening unless you were looking for something to leave here with, to actually make the world a better place. Before we get started, I do want to thank all the organizers of this event, the College of Social Work. If you put your hands together for them. For those of you who, if you've never put an event together, if all you've ever done is just show up at the event, it's so easy to just show right up, but these things are actually enormously complicated to assemble and put together. So I'm always grateful for everybody who does that. Thankful for all the lighting and sound crew, and I'm thankful for the ASL team that's here as well. Put your hands together for them, the interpreters. How many of you follow me on social media? I'm not going to crack jokes on the rest of you who don't. I don't know why you don't. I don't understand that about you. But there's something weird about social media, because I think in some ways it reduces people to a bit of a caricature of themselves. And if all you ever see are my tweets or my Facebook posts, or see something that I post on Instagram, like as I travel and speak, I've learned that for many of you, this is the first time where you've actually seen me walking and talking. Like all you've seen are tweets. And there's something dehumanizing. We call it social media, but there's something that dehumanizes each other. And it kind of presents a one-dimensional view of who we are. So many people know me through social media. I have 5 kids, and I was at a high school. My family and I had just moved to New York, and I was at an orientation for my daughter's high school. And this was about 2 years ago or so. And I heard some students and parents, they had recognized me, and I heard some students and parents like, I know they know I heard them, first off. Like they were close enough for me to hear them whispering. And here's what they whispered. They said, "There's at Shaun King." And I had a moment where I was thinking, no, damn it, my name is not at Shaun King. Like, I am right here in the room. Like, at is not a part of my name. But it was actually a revelation for me, because here I was in the room a few feet away from somebody, and they saw at Shaun King. And it was just a moment for me where I realized that technology has had such an impact that even when somebody is right there in the room, they still saw me as my Twitter handle. And technology has impacted us in a profound way. But I think the disservice, at least that I think it's done for some of us, is it has caused us to think we know somebody when we don't really know them. I was a high school history and civics teacher. I was a student leader when I was in college. I was student government president when I was a student at Morehouse College in Atlanta. And my time as a student leader, my time as a public school teacher, for almost 5 years I worked in Atlanta's juvenile justice system. I know now in retrospect, that was probably from 2003 to 2008. They call it juvenile justice system, but there's no justice in the system. They call it something else, but there's very little justice that happened in that system. And I was a traveling teacher there were 13 different youth detention centers around metro Atlanta, and I would travel from youth detention centers, jail to jail to jail, teaching at youth detention centers. And this was before Twitter even existed, and had a profound impact on how I saw the world. And so my tweets are embedded in my tweets is all of that experience, all of that life that I lived. The truth is, when I wake up in the morning, I don't even see myself as any of that. I definitely don't wake up and see myself as at Shaun King. First and foremost, I see myself as a father. I'm 39, but I've had kids since I was 19. Just a quick note. If you think college is hard, have a baby. I knew how babies were made, but it was not the smartest decision that my wife and I, we had been together, I'm 39, but we've been together since we were 15 and 16 years old. And we were making adult decisions, not thinking about adult ramifications. And so at 19 and 20 years old, we get married, we have a baby. We're sophomores and juniors in college. And so I've been a father almost literally my entire adult life. So that doesn't come out in my tweets. I stopped posting pictures of my kids. We get so many death threats and we experience so much ugliness. Like when I wake up, I see myself as a husband, as a father. I really see myself in a lot of ways as a historian. My undergraduate and graduate degrees are in history. And yet social media has reduced us to something less than the fullness of who we are. But I find myself in these problematic times that we're in. If you do see, I have a weird boot on my foot. This isn't just an ugly shoe. I find myself in these problematic times latching on to what I know. And I find myself leaning a lot on my experience as a historian and my training as a historian. And the lesson that I'm going to teach tonight is very much rooted in my background as a historian. Is that all right? Mm-hmm. On this screen is a man named Leopold von Ranke. And when I first saw this man, I have to kind of go back in time a little bit to unpack this for you. When I first saw this picture of this man, I was so irritated with him. Now, of course, this is a portrait of him from the mid-1800s. He's been dead for a long time. He did nothing to me. And from all indications, he was not problematic. But you have to go back to when I saw this image to understand what was going on in my mind. So I took a class. I was in a Master's of History program. And I took a class called The Introduction to Historiography. And all that is a class about how we study history. Historiography is the study of history and how we determine whose stories get told, how we determine who tells the stories of history. There's a lot of complicated issues there that deal with power and people in power and who gets to tell the stories of who's who in history. And in one of the first classes I was in January of 2015, spring of 2015, this man's face is flashed on the screen of the class, and I found myself looking at his face and wondering what in the world this hairy old white guy could teach me that mattered because of where I am. Now, listen, I know you've had that moment. Have you ever been in class? Now, if you have professors here, don't be too loud. But have you ever been in class and thought, how in the hell is this relevant? For where I'm going, for what I'm doing, for where the world is. And that's what I showed up in class and I'm like, really? Really, this what you're gonna teach me right now? Where we are, this man's got something to teach me? You have to go back one more semester. In 2014, I was doing work that's altogether different than what I'm doing now. 2014 is technically not that long ago, but so much has changed. If you just think politically about all that's changed in our country since 2014, I was actually working at a place called Global Green. I was not an organizer against police brutality. I was not a full-time journalist. I didn't even think I would be a journalist. I wrote for my school newspaper when I was in college. I thought one day about being a journalist, but it wasn't even on my radar. So I worked for this environmental charity, an international charity called Global Green. And I was at my cubicle. I was the director of communications. And I was at my cubicle, and I got an email. It was a Facebook message, actually, from a buddy of mine that I went to Morehouse with. And I had not seen him in years, but I stayed in touch with many of my college friends. And when I was in college, I was an organizer. I was known as a student leader. I was known as an activist. Particularly, we organized against police brutality all the way back when I was student government president in 1999. In 1999, when I was student government president, a young brother named Amadou Diallo was outside of his home in the Bronx. Beautiful, wonderful soul, like a kind, gentle man. His family, I've come to know his mother in the years since. His mother's a saintly queen of a woman. A lot of people see her as like a mentor to other mothers who've experienced police brutality. And Amadou was coming home from work and literally just walking up the doorstep of his home, and there was this violent crimes task force in his neighborhood. And they said they thought, they made this up out of thin air, they said they thought he looked like somebody they were looking for. They literally never produced the picture of who it was they were looking for. It was a complete fabrication. And Amadou, unarmed, nonviolent, literally, Amadou had never harmed a soul a day in his life, walks up the doorstep of his home in the Bronx. This violent crimes task squad swarm him, tell him to put his hands up, and Amadou shows him his wallet, and they then shoot him 41 times. And they said they thought his wallet was a gun. No guns, and no wallets look like guns. And several officers completely unloaded their clips into Amadou. And in 1999, many of you were babies. In 1999, that was our Ferguson moment as college students, except there was no Twitter, no Facebook, no social media, no YouTube. There was hardly even internet. And we just heard about this injustice that took place, and we were bothered by it. And what happened was, as I organized against issues of police violence, my friends from college always thought of me as Shaun the organizer. Even though I got married, I had kids, what happens is when you add people as friends on Facebook when you're in college, when you graduate college, you are always frozen in time to those Facebook friends. So like I have friends from college who were spoken word artists, and they have not done spoken word in 20 years, but I see them and I see spoken word. Because all I remember them as is who they were when we were in college. So every year of my life, every day almost, people who knew me from college would write me and say, Shaun, what are you going to do about this? Or what are you going to say about that? And I'm at my cubicle, summer of 2014, July of 2014, and I get a Facebook message from a friend of mine, and he said, Shaun, there is a video on YouTube that you have to see. He had a link, and he described what was in that video. And you have to, this is how much things have changed. Before this video, there had never been a viral video of police brutality. Now, all of us, horribly, have seen dozens of people being executed by police in one way or another. But at that point in time, I had never seen anything like this. There had never been a viral video of police violence. My friend said, Shaun, a guy that I know in New York has posted this video, and you have to see it. He said, Shaun, there's a middle-aged black man on a street corner in New York, and he said he's asking the police, literally nicely, please leave me alone. I didn't do anything. He said, Shaun, all of a sudden, an officer comes up behind this man and begins choking him. And the way my friend described it, he said, UFC style. And for any of you who watch mixed martial arts or UFC, you would know what I'm talking about. And he said, an officer comes up behind the man and begins choking him, UFC style, and wrestles him to the ground and continues choking him. And you can hear the man yell out, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. He said, Shaun, the guy says I can't breathe a dozen times, and I kid you not, he dies right there on the sidewalk. I'm at my cubicle, and I'm thinking, I don't even know if I want to click on this video. I didn't know what it was going to sound like, what it was going to look like. And I confess, there was a part of me that thought my friend had to have left something out. I click on the link, it goes to a YouTube video that had only been viewed a few hundred times at that point. We did not know the man's name. And it was just as my friend described, but worse. I see a man literally choked to death, screaming that he can't breathe until he dies. I had never at that point in my life seen a man go from fully alive to fully dead right before my eyes, from beginning, middle to end, until paramedics were just poking at him to see if he would move. He was dead. And I was shook at my cubicle. I kid you not, I never worked another real day at Global Green again. I came back to work the next day, all I could think about was that video. Is there a way for us to get justice for this man? So all I did was I figured out how to, see now there are apps to help you illegally download videos from YouTube, but in 2014 there were not apps for that. And so I was like, how am I going to get this video off of YouTube and post it on Facebook? I did not have a verified Facebook page. I'm talking about just to my friends. And I wanted to post that video, and I just wanted to explain to people what I think just happened. Found a way to get the video, I posted it on Facebook, and I posted 300 or 400 words explaining that injustice to the unnamed man, who we later came to know as Eric Garner. And that video went viral, and my post went viral, and was shared hundreds of thousands of times. The video was viewed tens of millions of times. And I started thinking, oh, we're about to get justice for this man. Because I was naive enough to believe at that moment that there was some connection between video views and justice. It made sense to me in my head at my cubicle that if people just see this, somebody's going to be held responsible. Here's how much people thought there would be justice in that case. Former President George W. Bush, Barack Obama was president when this happened, but former President George W. Bush did an interview about a week after Eric Garner was killed. And a week after he was killed, it took over the whole country. The whole world was chanting, I can't breathe, was saying Black Lives Matter, and people were protesting, even on this campus. And they did an interview with George W. Bush, and they asked him if he had seen the video. And he said yes, and he was horrified by it. And he literally said he thought it would only be a matter of time before there would be justice in this case. George W. Bush thought there would be justice. And I remember seeing that thinking, if he thinks there's going to be justice, there probably will be justice. 3 weeks after Eric Garner was killed, I got a text message on a Saturday about a boy, that's how it was explained to me, a teenage boy who had just been shot and killed in front of his grandmother's apartment by a police officer, and that he was laying in the middle of the street. And a friend of mine sent me, there was no such thing as Facebook Live. There was no Instagram Live, there was no Periscope. In August of 2014, there were apps where you could live stream things, but the app was literally called Livestream. And I clicked on this live stream link, and I saw a dead body in the middle of the street. And I had just 3 weeks earlier seen for the first time a dead body like that. And I'm thinking, oh, this is a problem. In my mind, I thought, it looks like people are being killed every 2 to 3 weeks here. This is a problem. There was blood flowing down the street from this body that had been draped with a sheet of some kind. And it wasn't as disturbing as that was. What was most disturbing was not the body, but people who were wailing and crying. Not protesters, these were family members. And there was a pain, like people were panicked and angry. People were begging to be able to touch him and get over there to him. And people were just act like it was, I had never heard anything like that. It was live. And I remember thinking as I watched it, this is about to be a real problem. The crowd was getting bigger and bigger. And these weren't protesters, these were neighbors and cousins and siblings, a mother, a father, a grandmother who saw their son, their grandson. It was Mike Brown in Ferguson. His father, who I've met, Mike Brown Sr., had just gotten remarried the previous Saturday. And Mike was the best man at his wedding. And his father had just gotten a phone call that he was dead on the middle of the street. I talked with Mike Brown Sr., who said when he got the call, he couldn't understand what they were saying. What do you like? What? Like, what do you mean? He's like, his brain could not calculate. Have you seen this picture of Mike Brown? He's happy, he's in a white shirt with a red Cardinals hat. That was at his father's wedding. The previous Saturday. 2 Saturdays before that, he had just graduated high school. He went to summer school and literally led the march. He had a gown on that was too tight. He had a flag from the school, and the school was so proud of him that they asked him to lead the march. The next day, somebody said, Shaun, something happened at a Walmart in Ohio. And they showed me this picture of this young black man, who's 21 years old, holding a baby. And they said, man, police shot this man at a Walmart in Ohio. His name was John Crawford. And they said he was in the pet food section at the Walmart. And somebody had lied and said there was an active shooter at the store. He had never touched a gun a day in his life. Police stormed the store, legit scared to death. And the moment they see him, they shoot him and kill him. He had no idea even what they were there for. He's literally, have you ever tried to shop and talk on the phone at the same time? It's really hard. And so his girlfriend, who had just had their baby 4 weeks prior, he's on the phone with her, and he clearly just stopped so he can have the conversation. He's just talking on the phone. Broke no laws, and he just shot and killed. And I have a moment where I'm thinking, at first when I saw what happened to Eric Garner, I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And 2 to 3 weeks later, we see Mike Brown, and the next day we see John Crawford. We did not know, that the Washington Post eventually won a Pulitzer Prize for this. We did not know, because there were no public databases yet, that people weren't being killed by police every 2 to 3 weeks. It was every 3 to 4 hours. It just hadn't been tracked. That every day there were 3, 4, 5, as many as 10, 12 people killed by police all over the country. We had no idea. To literally give you context for that, in South Korea, a person has not been shot and killed by police in over 50 years. Like, we have 3 or 4 a day at best. At worst, it can balloon up to 12 or 13 on a random day. In the UK, it's about 8 people a year. There has not been a week in years where we haven't had 8 people killed by police in a week. We just didn't understand the extent of the problem. And I began, as others did, trying to figure out how can we organize to stop this? How can we get these families justice? And I did something. I'm writing a book, and I tell this story in my book. I did something out of a good place, but I've since come to deeply regret it. I met many of these families, and as close as we are right here, I would look these families in the face and say, listen, hold on, hang in there, we're going to get justice for your family. I said that over and over again. I wasn't the only person saying it, but I meant it. And there was not a single part of me that thought I was exaggerating, that thought I was over-promising. I believed. I could not imagine a scenario where the family of Eric Garner got no justice. George W. Bush thought there would be justice. Family after family. Then that November 2014, we learned that there was a 12-year-old boy, a 6th grade boy named Tamir Rice, who was just a few blocks from his mother's house at the park over Thanksgiving break, who was shot and killed by police. And the officer who shot and killed him had just been fired from his previous department about 15 months prior. And in his termination statement, they literally said he should never work as a police officer again. That's a rare thing, mind you. And when the Cleveland Police Department hired him, they literally never checked the records. Never checked the records. Timothy Loman is his name. He failed the entry exam into the Cleveland Police Department over and over and over again. You have to have an 80 on the exam. Mind you, this was a man who had already been a police officer and gotten fired, was getting a 40 and 50 on the entry exam. And they allowed him to fail it over and over and over again until he got the minimum score and they hired him. 9 months later, he shot and killed Tamir Rice. And I thought to myself, oh, this family is definitely going to get justice. People had already tried to thugify Mike Brown and others like, no, this is a boy. You're not going to do this to him. In that winter, the winter of 2014, millions of people were organizing all over the world, chanting, tweeting, Facebooking, Black Lives Matter. And that winter, we soon realized that there would be no justice for any of those families. Not for Eric Garner, not for Mike Brown, not for John Crawford. There was a young brother named Ezell Ford, who a police officer literally put a gun to his back and shot him through his back, blowing out his chest. It's like, my thought was legit. My thought was, he's going to jail. You can't do that. 1,100 people were killed by police in 2014. And there was not a single officer held responsible. Not 30, 20, 10, 5, 2, 1, 0. I don't know how many of you are math majors or into statistics. Like statistically, that's ridiculous. Of course, 5 of those, 11 of those were wrong and someone should have been held responsible. Of course, 0.5% of those had to be wrong. What I learned from that 0.00% was that the system was built and designed to guarantee nobody would be held responsible. We just didn't know that. So here I am, looking people right in the face, saying, listen, hold on, just hold on, hang in there, we're going to get justice for your family. I know it, I believe it. Not knowing that the whole system was designed to ensure that none of them got justice. We did not know, we didn't understand it that way. Case after case, during the winter of 2014, they weren't even going to fire the officer who killed Eric Garner. The chokehold had been banned by the NYPD for 15 years. When he applied the chokehold to an unarmed, nonviolent man, he broke at least 6 policies in the department. I'm not even talking about criminally, just policy. They didn't even fire him. Like, I had come to learn those policies. So in my mind, I came to know Eric Garner's wife, his mother, his children, his daughter, Erica Garner, who passed away literally, like she was 29 years old, literally died fighting for justice for her father. There are multiple times I talked to Erica telling her, listen, there might not be criminal charges, but they're going to fire this man. They never even fired him. And so I found myself in a deep funk. I was probably clinically depressed. I had never fought so hard for so much and got so little in return. It actually defied my understanding of the principles of hard work in America. My mother, who worked in a light bulb factory in Versailles, Kentucky, for almost 50 years, she made light bulbs for this company in Sylvania. It was a brutal, difficult job. My mother taught me over and over and over again these principles of hard work and how you will get out what you put in. And it was like I wasn't even thinking. My mother taught me the principles of hard work, but I knew how hard we worked for justice. So I expected some return. There was no return. And I showed up to class in January of 2015, and I saw this man's face, and I'm like, I hate you. He did not deserve it, but there was a part of me that I wasn't just frustrated. He's not even American. He was a historian in Germany. But in the moment, I'm just thinking, listen, I don't know what you think you have to say, but it cannot address what I'm dealing with right now. And so I tried to drop the class. Are you out of the ad drop period now? You know, there's this little window of time where you can go online and look at what classes are available. You can drop a class and add it. And I was jammed up already because it was a required part of my curriculum. But I just thought, like, I can't take this class right now. This class is so deeply irrelevant, I can't take it. And I went, and the only thing, I don't know how it is at NC State, but where I went to grad school, there are only like 2 woke professors at the whole university. And their classes fill up right away. So I looked like all the woke classes were full. And I was like, the only thing that was left was like advanced badminton. And I thought, I'm gonna take advanced badminton. I'm gonna take it. I had no idea they had badminton 1, but badminton 2 has to be better than this. And so I looked at my options and I had no options. And I was just stuck in the class. You've had that happen before. You're like, I'm stuck in this class. I'm just gonna have to take it and just not get an F. If you had that moment, you're like, okay, just pass. Just get through this. Just don't tank my GPA. You know, I'm just gonna get through. I'm gonna take it. And I wish I could take credit for it, but I wanted out of the class. But being in that class changed my life. And the lessons that I learned from this man, Leopold von Ranke, changed how I saw what was about to happen. In 3 months in Baltimore, police would arrest a young man named Freddie Gray and put him in the back of a police truck. And by the time they got to the police station, his entire spine had been severed. And I thought, foolish of me. Oh, somebody's going to jail. Because I saw him wide awake and talking when you put him in the back of that truck. How did his spine get severed on the way to the police department? A month later, beautiful, powerful activist named Sandra Bland had just taken a job at Prairie View A&M in Texas. And I've been to Prairie View. I saw this turn that she made. She was from Chicago, and she graduated from Prairie View and had just driven with family all the way to Texas to take this new job at Prairie View. And as she pulled off of campus, it was technically, do you know how there are some streets at NC State that it's kind of campus, but kind of not campus? You know what I mean? Like it's still, it may not technically be campus, but it's still NC State. So she had pulled off of the campus proper onto a street that is still thought to be campus, and she sees behind her this police officer driving like a bat out of hell, going 80 miles an hour on the road. You can see his dash cam. You can see it happen. And she pulls her car over thinking he's going somewhere. So she pulls her car over to the right, and he puts his lights on and decides to arrest her for not putting on her turn signal. She got over for him, thinking that she was doing the right thing. She just didn't put her turn signal on. She thought she was in a dangerous moment or creating one for him. So she pulled the car over. He confronts her over it. She literally tells him, hell, I got over for you. He then threatens to electrocute her multiple times with his taser. She is in this moment thinking, what's going on here? I pulled my car over for you and you're threatening to harm me. He then tells her things that you may think are normal, but they're not normal. He tells her to put out her cigarette. And she's like, what? Why do I have to put out my cigarette? What are you at? What are we doing here? Who are you in my world? You're threatening to electrocute me, to put out my, what's going on here? And he tells her to get out of the car. She's like, no, I'm not getting out of the car. I didn't do anything. And he literally grabs her and pulls her out of the car, throws her on her head, and takes her to jail in rural Texas, where she died 3 days later. And I kid you not, the lesson that I'm about to teach you shaped how I saw what happened. The next year, we saw on Facebook Live, Philando Castile be killed on Facebook Live. I told his family the same thing. I could not imagine 100 scenarios. I could not imagine a single scenario where the officer who killed Philando Castile on Facebook Live was not convicted of something. He wasn't. I said the same dumb shit to his family too. Hold on. You are going to get justice. Hang in there. Hold on. I believed it. Leopold von Ranke is called by many people the father of the study of history. And they call him that for good reason. Now, society has had historians forever. You could go back in any ancient civilization and they have historians. Leopold von Ranke did two things that caused people to call him the father of the study of history. The first is he created some of the first undergraduate and graduate degree programs in history. There have been historians for thousands of years, but he thought we need to make this an academic discipline. It's not enough for some people to be historians. We need to train them. You need to be able to get an undergraduate degree in history, a graduate degree in history. And he pioneered that. It's the second thing that he did that I want to talk to you about. He decided to create a detailed timeline of human history. Now you have to understand, this is in 1830s, 1840s. Think of all the things you do today when you want to know if something's true or not. You probably pull out your phone or go to your computer. You may go to Google. You may search something. If it's a news story, you may go to social media to just see, are people talking about this? There was no internet. There were no computers. There was no television, no 24-hour news. All the things that we have had for most of our lives in this room, none of that existed. If you didn't find it in a book that you physically touched, you didn't know it. And so at that point in time, you have to understand, pre-internet, pre-telephone, societies were hyper-local. And most of the people in the world knew almost nothing about the rest of the world because it was hard to be known. Even in the 1800s, most of the world was not even literate yet. And so he began this process of creating a detailed timeline of human history. And the first thing that he did was he began assembling thousands and thousands and thousands of stories. This is an image, I haven't counted, but the person who created it says there are 10,000 faces in this image. 10,000 people from throughout human history. And every time I look at it, I see somebody different or new. Like, I see Gene Simmons from Kiss with his tongue out at the bottom. A few of you know who that is. Let me see if this works. I see